This is TLC to go.
Have you ever stopped to wonder, what really makes learning stick, especially in a field as demanding as health sciences? Why do some lessons just click and really change how someone practices while others, well, they seem to fade away almost immediately?
It's a huge question.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the core issue that, learning just isn't one size fits all, is it?
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into how people learn, drawing on some fantastic insights from the UTHSC Teaching and Learning Center. They've put together a really solid framework.
They really have. A great resource for educators.
Yeah. And our mission here is to unpack some of the key learning theories, sort of a shortcut for health sciences faculty like you listening, to maybe optimize your teaching. Because understanding these theories, it's not just, academic. It can genuinely transform how you design learning experiences that are effective and, crucially, that stick.
That's precisely it. These theories give you an evidence-based way to think about teaching. It helps educators move beyond just intuition, what feels right. Instead, you can intentionally design really powerful learning environments, tailored for students, but also for experienced practitioners. It's about being deliberate, strategic, understanding the why.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's start with maybe one of the most foundational approaches, behaviorism.
A classic.
When we talk behaviorism, names like Pavlov, Watson, Skinner, Thorndike often come up. And the core idea seems pretty straightforward, right? Learning is basically just a change in behavior, what you can see.
Exactly. It's all about the observable. And what's really key here for educators is understanding the principles.
Yep.
The focus is on that observable behavior, yes, but also the huge influence of the environment.
Right, the context.
And the critical role of reinforcement. It's not just rewards. It's about shaping specific actions through feedback. You're essentially engineering these precise feedback loops.
Okay, so it guides learners towards making certain skills almost automatic.
Precisely. Which then frees up their mental energy for more complex stuff later on.
That makes sense. So in health sciences teaching, where does behaviorism really fit best?
Well, it's fantastic for foundational clinical skills. Mastering a specific physical exam technique or getting sterile procedure down pat.
Things you can clearly see and assess.
Exactly. And procedural skills in general.
Yeah.
Also, those simulation scenarios where practicing a very specific response is the goal.
Okay, so what kind of learning activities really align with that?
Activities that give you clear, measurable outcomes are perfect. So direct observation of skills instructor watches gives immediate feedback using really clear templates or rubrics for assessment. That defines desired behavior, makes assessment objective.
Right. Everyone knows the target.
Yeah. And OSC's objective structured clinical examinations are sort of the gold standard here. A controlled environment to evaluate specific, observable actions. It provides that behavioral scaffolding.
Okay, so that covers shaping those observable actions really well. But what about what's happening inside the learner's head, the thinking part?
Right. It's not just doing, it's thinking.
Yeah, and that's where cognitive theory comes in, isn't it? Shifting the focus inward. People like Neisser, Sweller.
Indeed. Cognitive theory looks at those internal mental processes, things like memory, how we perceive information, how we process it.
So it's less about the external stimulus and more about the internal handling of it.
Exactly. The key principle is really about structuring, organizing, and sequencing information in the mind, making it easier to process and, crucially, retrieve later.
So the educator becomes almost like an architect of the learner's mental pathways.
That's a great way to put it. You're helping build those intellectual highways so complex information doesn't just get lost. It finds its way into long-term memory.
Okay, so that sounds incredibly useful for complex subjects, like in health sciences.
Oh, definitely.
It must be great for helping students build useful knowledge structures, those mental frameworks for organizing tons of information.
Absolutely. And it's vital for developing clinical reasoning skills that requires complex thought pattern recognition, generating hypotheses.
Things that aren't just simple behaviors.
Right. So connecting this to the bigger picture, it's about making all that complexity digestible, making it interconnected in the learner's mind.
So what activities help with that?
Well, structured case discussions are great, but you need to design them to force students to organize the information. Maybe using frameworks like OMP or SNAPPS is another popular one, a mnemonic for presenting cases clearly.
So they're like cognitive shortcuts.
Sort of, yeah. They structure the thinking. Developing illness scripts is another one, building mental templates for recognizing patterns.
Okay.
Concept maps. When used, well, they're not just diagrams. They help learners visualize and internalize how complex knowledge fits together. Hierarchy, relationships, makes retrieval much easier.
Got it. So we've got behavior shaping and mental architecture, but learning isn't just organizing info, is it? It's also about making sense of it, building meaning.
Actively constructing understanding.
Yeah. How do we help learners do that, especially when they bring their own experiences? That sounds like constructivist theory, right? Piaget, Vygotsky.
Exactly. Constructivism emphasizes that learning happens when learners actively connect new stuff to what they already know.
Okay.
The key ideas are the learner is active in this, building your own understanding. And the faculty role. It's crucial you need to activate that prior knowledge, help them bridge the gap.
So you might even need to create a bit of, disequilibrium, challenge their existing ideas.
Precisely. That little bit of confusion or challenge prompts deeper thinking and integration.
Which makes constructivism perfect for teaching things like critical reflection, right?
Yeah.
And really helping learners find deep meaning in their experiences, not just memorizing.
Absolutely. Moving beyond just surface understanding.
Yeah.
Helping them internalize it.
So how do we create those spaces for learners to, really build their own understanding?
That's the key question. Activities like dedicated reflection time may be after a challenging patient encounter. Structured debriefs after simulations are vital. And M&M conferences, morbidity and mortality, those are powerful constructivist spaces.
Because they force learners to process, analyze,
and integrate what happened into what they know, connect theory to the real world, identify their own gaps. It really fosters metacognition, thinking about their own thinking.
Right. Okay, so we've covered behavior, cognition, construction. But people don't learn in isolation, do they? We're social beings.
Definitely not. The social context is huge.
So that brings us to social learning theory. We're talking Bandura, LaVey, and Wenger with situated learning, Brown and Duguid on communities of practice. It's all about learning from and with others.
Social learning theory highlights that learning happens through observing others, interacting with them within that whole learning environment, classroom, clinic, wherever.
So relationships matter a lot.
Absolutely. And learning by watching and participating in those social contexts, it's fundamental to how we develop our professional identity too, often picking up subtle cues and shared ways of doing things.
That makes so much sense for health sciences. It sounds perfect for teaching things like interpersonal and communication skills.
Crucial skills, yeah.
And developing the right attitudes, internalizing professional values. A lot of that isn't in a textbook, is it?
Not at all. You learn it by watching experienced clinicians, interacting with the team, with patients. It's that whole hidden curriculum idea in practice.
So what learning activities leverage this social aspect best?
Well, what's fascinating is just how inherently social health sciences education is. But specific activities, in-depth case studies that require collaboration, mentoring relationships, formal or informal, that guidance from experienced practitioners is invaluable.
Role modeling, too, I imagine.
Explicit role modeling by faculty is key, demonstrating those desired behaviors. And focused one-on-one teaching allows for direct interaction, observation, guided participation. It shows learners not just what to do, but how a professional thinks and acts.
Okay, interaction, observation. But what about the individual learner's own drive, their personal journey?
Yes. That brings us towards a more individual focus. Humanist learning theory. Think Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow.
Right, putting the learner right at the center, self-actualization.
Exactly. In the humanist view, learning is really seen as individual development, a self-directed process.
So the motivation comes from within.
That's the core principle. Motivation fueled by that intrinsic desire to achieve one's potential. And the idea is, if you provide a supportive environment, learners will take responsibility for their own learning.
It's about empowerment then, recognizing their goals, their experiences.
Precisely. Autonomy, developing the whole person, not just their technical skills.
So how does that translate into teaching activities? It sounds less structured.
It often is. It favors activities with more learner, autonomy, creativity. Think big, open-ended projects where students might define some of their own objectives.
Okay.
Comprehensive portfolios where they track and reflect on their own growth over time. That really emphasizes self-reflection.
And problem-based learning, that seems to fit.
Especially problem-based learning, yes. Learners take the lead in tackling complex, maybe ill-defined problems using their own resources and drive.
So connecting that to the bigger picture, it's about fostering that lifelong learning habit. taking ownership.
Exactly. Nurturing that intrinsic drive. These activities encourage them to explore, to grow in ways that feel meaningful to them. Plus, they promote self-assessment, metacognition, figuring out how they learn best.
Okay, that's a great perspective on the individual. So we've gone through behavioral, cognitive, constructivist, social, humanist. Quite a tour. But what about when our learners aren't, traditional students, when they're already professionals, experienced clinicians?
Critical distinction. That brings us to adult learning theory, or andragogy. Malcolm Knowles is the key name here.
Andragogy, right? So how does that differ?
Well, andragogy recognizes that adults learn best when they see the immediate relevance. The why this matters to me right now.
Makes sense. They're busy people.
Exactly. They need to know the way from what's in it for me. They also really benefit from timely, constructive feedback. They thrive on real-world experiences, and they want to be active participants, not just passive listeners.
So what are the key principles?
Adults generally understand they're responsible for their own learning. They bring a wealth of past experience to the table, and that experience is a valuable resource.
You can't ignore that.
Definitely not. And they're usually internally motivated. They learn because they perceive a need, a problem they need to solve in their practice. They need to be ready to learn.
This sounds absolutely essential for teaching practicing health professionals then, like preparing them for patient care realities.
It's critical. It's best used for teaching the direct provision of patient care, where relevance is obvious, and for developing complex diagnostic or therapeutic plans, often collaboratively. It respects that they aren't blank slates.
Right. So how do we best leverage their experience? What activities work well?
That really raises the question, doesn't it? Are we effectively using their unique backgrounds? Relevant activities include learning right there in the authentic context. Outpatient clinics, inpatient wards.
Learning by doing, essentially.
But in a way, yes.
Yeah.
Participating in structured case conferences is great to collaborative problem solving based on real patients. And M&M conferences again. They are powerful for adult learners because they allow reflection on actual outcomes, leveraging that collective experience to improve practice. It hits that immediate relevance button hard.
Wow. Okay, so that's quite a journey through 6 really distinct yet kind of interconnected ways of thinking about learning.
It really covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, from behaviorism's observable actions, cognitive theory's mental maps, constructivism's meaning-making, social learning's interactions, humanism's self-direction, and finally, andragogy for adult learners.
Each offers a different valuable lens.
Exactly. And having that theoretical toolkit, it's not just academic jargon, is it? It really feels like a game changer for how you approach teaching.
It really is.
Yeah.
Understanding these frameworks lets faculty move beyond just delivering content. It means you can intentionally design experiences that are more effective, definitely more engaging, and hopefully more meaningful.
Right. Which should lead to better practitioners.
And ultimately, better patient outcomes.
Yeah.
It helps you troubleshoot when learning isn't happening and choose your strategies with real purpose.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As a health sciences faculty member, think about which of these theories you find yourself leaning on most, maybe without even realizing it.
That's a good reflection point.
And maybe, is there one theory you heard about today that you might want to explore a bit more deeply? Something that could unlock some new possibilities for your learners. Maybe spark a different approach next time you teach.
Worth considering.
Well, we hope this deep dive gave you some fresh perspectives, maybe some practical ideas. There's always so much more to explore in education and beyond.
Always more to learn.
Definitely. So we invite you to join us for other deep dives right here whenever you're ready to learn more.